Hey everybody, welcome back to Photorec.tv. I'm Toby and I have here the Tamron 150-500, a new lens for Sony cameras that is quite compelling. Now this isn't a full review, so if you want detailed sharpness tests, hold on. I'm going to be bringing you that after I finish using this on a workshop in 2 weeks in Katmai Peninsula of Alaska photographing brown bears. So I'm really looking forward to using this in a real world situation. No, this video is 10 things I found interesting about this lens that I think you might find interesting too. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. I run my own website on Squarespace, both Photorec.tv and my own personal portfolio site. I chose Squarespace because it is easy to add content to. Squarespace makes it so easy with their drag and drop templates. Their designs are gorgeous, modern, and clean, and I know they're going to look good on any device. I don't have to worry about aspect ratios, screen sizes. Squarespace takes care of all of that. You can try them out for free with a free trial at squarespace.com/photorectv. Using that link will save you 10% when you go to buy. Thanks Squarespace, and thank you for checking them out. This is the Tamron 150-500. It's an f5 to f6.7 lens. As you zoom, you keep that f5 till about 270. Then above 270, you have f5.6 till you hit 390. You switch to f6.3, and you have f6.3 all the way out till you hit 500 when it switches to f6.7. Now you notice, as I zoom, this lens does extend. I think its closest competitor is the 200-600 from Sony. That's a larger, heavier, more expensive lens that we'll talk a little bit about in a few moments. It is internal zoom only in that lens, so there is an issue here where if you don't like that kind of extending lens, this might not be the lens for you. But I'll say that that design choice that Tamron made allows them to keep the lens smaller and more compact. It's pretty impressive in size, especially when you put it up next to the 100-400. It really isn't any bigger, despite giving a little bit longer of a reach. And one of the other things that I want to point out that's really nice about this lens that at first I thought meant the lens was broken is the zoom lock. So as I started to zoom this, right as I got it out of the box, I thought there was a little bit more play in the zoom ring than I wanted, but it turns out that this is a nice clutch lock zoom system. That means that at any point in your zoom range, if you simply give the zoom ring a little push, you'll lock it into place. This is really nice. They also offer a lock switch, but many lenses only offer a lock switch, and I find that small lock switch kind of an annoying place. Oftentimes I'll lock it when I'm traveling or walking with the lens down so that it doesn't creep, and then when I go to use it, I have to take my hand off the lens, unlock, and then I'm good to go. With this clutch system, at any point I can lock, and if I'm ready to unlock, it's just a quick slide back. You can see that that little white ring appears as a visual indicator that you've locked it. I find this a very smooth, very user-friendly way to lock the lens at any position. On this side of the lens, we've got a lot of switches. First, we've got 3 modes of image stabilization. You've got your standard image stabilization that when you bring the camera up to your eye and half press the shutter, it kicks in, stabilizing just before you take the picture. Mode 2 is set for panning. So if you're following a fast-moving subject left or right, a soccer player running down the field or a bird in flight, that would be the most appropriate stabilization mode for you. And mode 3 sounds great, but I am a little bit worried about its impact on battery life. It is always on. If the camera's on, the lens stabilization system is running. And that means the benefit. You're like, well, what is the benefit there? Some of you might say. It's as soon as you bring the camera up to your eye and start to compose, even before you half press the shutter, the stabilization system is working, and that allows you to clearly see your subject, especially if you're out at 500 millimeters. Will I use it often? Probably not, because I think that's going to take a real hit on battery life. That's good. We also have, of course, turning image stabilization off or on. We have an AF/MF switch, and then we have a focus limiter, which is useful if you're focusing on the more narrow range or on the more distant range. Both of those are options in there. What we don't have on this lens is any kind of focus hold button. That is that customizable button that we find on many Sony cameras. cameras, lenses that we find on many Sony lenses, and even some third-party lenses do include it. You can assign that a variety of different functions. I typically use mine to quickly recall a group of settings that will allow me to capture birds in flight. So one moment I can be shooting landscapes, I see a nice Caspian tern flying over my head, I can hold that button down and my camera is suddenly in that. I've got a video that talks more about that. I think that's one of the nicest features of the Sony cameras is that custom memory recall. This video is brought to you by Squarespace. Start at squarespace.com/PhotorecTV to get your 10% discount. You get a free 14-day trial. I'm going to hit that Get Started button. All of these different gorgeous designs, but let's jump right to photography and let's start with Matsuya. Once you pick a beautiful template, you're presented with the design, editing, customization. I'm going to actually skip this for now and show you what's going to pop up over here on the right, the little assistant. This is going to walk you through step by step with clear, easy instructions on exactly what you need to do to make this site yours and to showcase your work. In addition to this beautiful portfolio, you can set up easy commerce. You want to sell your work, you want to sell merchandise, you want to sell physical products or digital goods, Squarespace supports that. In addition, it has marketing tools built in. You can book clients and schedule. And of course, you've got analytics, so you can track who's visiting your website and how they're getting there. Squarespace truly is an all-in-one platform that makes it incredibly easy to do whatever you need to online. Check them out today, squarespace.com/PhotorecTV to save 10% off your purchase. One other thing that is on here that I really appreciate, better than Sony, is the tripod collar foot is Arca Swiss compatible. So that means that without even putting a plate on it, if you're an Arca Swiss tripod owner, you can just put your camera right in there. I also think that this lens is balanced pretty nicely and fits on here well. My solution to Sony lenses that don't offer that was actually to take the foot off and screw a small Peak Design tripod plate directly into the hole where the foot goes. You can do that. That reduced profile and just a little bit smaller of a lens then I appreciate for travel. There are some times though when I miss that little additional height and separation that the foot provides. So thank you, Tamron. I like this. This is nice. IAF does work. Tested it on birds and humans. There's always a question, how well will the IAF work with third-party lenses? I think it's less and less of a question these days, and I found this lens to have no real issues compared to the 100 to 400. One bit of bad news, I've seen a lot of people asking about this online. I've got a 1.4 teleconverter here that works really nicely with my 100 to 400. It does not work with this lens. It physically will not fit. This little kind of rubber protrusion will not fit inside that lens. At some point in the future, Tamron might come out with their own teleconverters that will work with this lens in Sony bodies, but I've seen no sign of that at this point. I also haven't looked for it, but I know they're not out now. One of the things that this camera can do, that I'm holding right here, the Sony A1, is shoot 30 frames per second. Now there are some caveats to that, and one of those was that you should have, or it only will work with Sony lenses, and actually not even all Sony lenses. Surprisingly, this Tamron seems to get 30 frames per second too. Take a look over here. A few minutes before I recorded this video, I put the camera up to the microphone on high plus on the dial with the Sony 100 to 400 on it, and in 1 second I recorded just over 30 frames per second. Each peak is a shutter fire. You want to pause the video and count those? You can. Then I put the Tamron 150, oops, I typed 600, 150 to 500 on here, also on H+, and it's identical. I got the exact same number of shots. Then just to make sure that I wasn't messing anything up, I dropped it to high. So not high plus, but high, which I have set to shoot 20 frames per second, and it did indeed shoot 20 frames per second. So this lens on the Sony A1 will give you 30 frames per second. That only applies to A1 shooters. In all other Sony bodies, there should be no question at all, but then here again in the Sony A1, there doesn't seem to be a question. You get all of it. This lens will work with Sony APS-C cameras, so the A6400, the 6500, it then becomes, math, a 225 to 700 millimeter lens. That's some decent range. Those are the items that I wanted to tell you about on the Tamron 150 to 500. As I said, I'm waiting to give my full thoughts and results after using it in the wild for a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. Based on my early testing, it seems like a very compelling and good lens. I don't know how many A1 shooters will be using this, because if you have enough money for the A1, you probably are adding on a 100 to 400 or the 200 to 600. But all other Sony models, if you're buying into a more budget-friendly model and you want a budget-friendly zoom, this seems to be a very compelling option. At only $13.99, I mean, the competitor, the 200 to 600, let's take a look at that for just a moment. It's a very nice lens. I reviewed this about a year ago. Very happy with it, other than the fact that it is not nearly as travel-friendly as the 100 to 400 or this 150 to 500. I will be able to make some comparisons with this lens in Alaska as well. It is $600 more, and it weighs about a half pound more, so 4.65 pounds. This Tamron weighs just over 4 pounds. So a bigger, more expensive lens gives you a little bit more range, and of course does offer that focus hold customization button on the side. Another option that you might think about, well, not really the Tamron 70-300. I have that right here. I haven't tested it yet. This is sitting on my Sony A7R III. This is a very budget-friendly lens at just $500 with it currently on sale. But there is one more lens that I think you could consider, and that is the Sigma 100 to 400 for Sony. Sitting at just $850, 400 to 500 is a pretty small difference, and this lens is even more travel friendly, but does not come with a tripod collar. So if you're thinking about putting it on a gimbal, following birds, that Sigma becomes a lot less exciting. But it is a much more lighter lens, and it is a much more compact lens. With the addition of the extra VC or stabilization modes, the quality build, the clutch focusing mechanism, my early thoughts are again that I think this is going to be a really good buy for someone looking to get as much zoom as possible without spending too much money. If you found this useful, quick, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit subscribe so you can see brown bears photographed with this lens in Alaska in just a couple of weeks. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.